The front home page of the application, and in this explainer video I'll be talking about why I made some decisions and how the application works. So let's start off with the overall architecture of this application. So the app's overall architecture is an hybrid web application as opposed to an SPA, that's a single page application. So why I decided not to use an SPA for this simple application is because I felt the architecture of an SPA is better suited for retrieving data and data resources from standalone API. So in this application, I didn't build a standalone API, so I didn't have to retrieve. Much of the work wasn't retrieving data, but rather posting or sending data across to an API or a database, and then database. So, okay, also another reason why I chose not to use an SPA was because the framework I use, that Vue.js, doesn't have an inbuilt router, but it has a separate um, routing, like it has Vue router, and I didn't want to bloat the app with too many dependencies because it's a rather simple application. Okay, so let's go to the application. So the app is divided into three main modules. We have the views, which are represented by the assets, but also there's a views folder. But I'll get back to why I used the assets folder as opposed to the views folder. Then we have controllers, the models. Basically, sales is a MVC framework. So we always have the modules, the views, and the controllers. So the assets folder. So sales has this concept of asset routes or blueprint routes and explicit routes. Basically, you will want to use an explicit route when you're rendering to through a template, and maybe you're not using any framework or just any standalone framework like Vue or React. So the asset route doesn't involve passing the templates provided by sales, that which is all these ones here. So what the asset route does is to route the request from the front end without passing these templates and transferring this template and making this template a single HTML file and rendering it. So what this asset does is you can use any framework and write your normal HTML, then use that framework's interpolation feature like Vue. So what Vue does. So that is why I decided not to use. And again, um, using this um, explicit route, you have to return a lot of JSON from either the API or the database, and that would be a lot of work when you can just use Vue's interpolation and blueprint route or asset route. So let's go into the flow of the application. So upon starting the application, or okay, let's go to the controllers. I have here 5 controllers: the Orbis controller, the login controller, the page controller, the register controller, and the user controller. So when a user, so what you are seeing here, what you are seeing here is the home page, which is controlled by the page controller. So what this simply does is This is a save function, a save function. So what it does is it uses sales session ID. Um, okay, you could also use a Redis. You can also store the session ID in Redis, but I felt it was too simple to be using another database to store session IDs. So I decided to use the inbuilt session IDs that sales provided. So what this set function is doing is it's saying if the request doesn't have a session ID, that means you have to redirect to the home page. And and that is what is showing here, this is the home page. And since there's no session ID, you have to log in and sign up to get a session ID. So what this logout function is doing is it checks if the session ID is in place and also redirects. But it finds if the user is logged in, it finds the ID of the user using this session ID. So that is what all this is doing. Okay, so the first entry point is the page controller. So let's go to the so let's log in. I already have a default username and with default email and password. Okay, and besides, login controller is controlled by obviously the login controller.